clump of trees drawn on a British map made before the American Revolution marks a place known as Cheniere TIG. A cheniere is an oak grove and is the name given to the oak-covered ridges formed along the old beaches of the Gulf. Surrounded by salty marsh, the ridges, or cheniere, are virtual islands of the marsh. Situated prominently on the Louisiana coastline, the Cheniere TIG became a stopping place on the sailing routes between New Orleans and Galveston, Texas. By 1828, a permanent settlement was established at Cheniere TIG in a land inhabited formerly by Indians, wild beasts, panthers, tigers, pirates, and Texas revolutionaries.
My grandpa Isaac, when they come down, they moved down the other end over there. But his daddy was Simon White, but they lived away from here up in Texas somewhere. That's where they was at for the revolution up there. They wandered about here and there. His mom had died, and he brought Isaac, he brought him down here, and that's where he grew up over here. Then for the Civil War, they didn't like what was going on, so they went to Guatemala. They left in a sailing schooner. They called it a ship, but they left around Abbeville there, a bunch of them, and they stayed 3 years, or my grandpa did, and they came back over here, come back right here to Cheniere TIG. I mean, they came to New Orleans, but then they came back and settled over here again. They didn't like the government, the laws and what the carpetbaggers and all that coming down in here. They didn't like all what was going on, and they claimed it was a better country up there, and they went. But they come back. They took their stuff to make syrup, sugar cane, mills and all that, took that with them. But it couldn't have been a very big schooner because it come through Vermilion Bay, of course. It could have been that was pretty big. There's a bunch of 30, 40 people went over there. But during the Civil War, my great-grandpa, they hid out in the woods. They wouldn't go. They were what they called jayhawkers. They stayed hid out. Yeah, my old grandpa told me he could remember they had an old oak stump in the garden, and his mother used to put a brick on there sometime. Other time she'd pull that brick off, but he noticed when that brick was on there, his daddy didn't come home at night. There was more than him. There was some others hid out. But that's how they had a way of knowing people was around, somebody was around in the area, so they'd hide out. Yeah, well, I was born in 1917, and my folks left the next year. There was a hurricane that passed here, and it kind of destroyed all their fruit trees they had. They went to Little Prairie and lived over there. And for about 4 years, we came back here in 1922 and moved back over here, and that's where I grew up over here. We went to school in that old one-room schoolhouse. Made that old upright board. The batten was going over the cracks. You could look in there and see who was in the schoolhouse. That old pot-bellied heater in there, and that's how we'd all gang around there in the wintertime and warm up. We'd go to school barefooted. And sometimes they had the ice on the old wagon tracks. We'd play in that, and then get to school, we'd cry a while until we warm our feet up. They would trap in the winter around the woods, and I got old enough when I went trapping in the Marsh. I was about 12 years old when I first went in the Marsh, trapping right back of the Chameleon Corporation Club back there.
I'll never forget that. Old man Walter says, "Sarah, get them kids and put some clean clothes on." I said, "Tomorrow we all going to Cheniere TIG. Bring the cars and everything." You understand? Your grandpa, old man Walter, he had that big school. So we went there at freshwater bar. We loaded them 2 cars. They had all of my bunch and Pop and all of them. It must have been about 10 or 12 of us. All a bunch of Uncle Sam's and Uncle Carter's. We put that on them cars. We went there on freshwater bar and got a high bank there on that prairie, We unloaded them cars. We tied that old schooner. We went right through that marsh. We went to Cheniere TIG. They never did see a car in their life when we went there. Man, we had them old Model Ts. It was one for Uncle Sam and one for Uncle Carter. Uncle Sam had a brand new one. and Uncle Carter had a second hand, you know. And them fenders, we was all, everything you could hang somebody on the fender. Some of them would sit down on each side of them fenders, you know. Them cars were just packed. And they had the suitcases and clothes. We all stayed a week there, you know. Yeah. Old fella, he butchered a cow and he butchered them pigs, you know. He had hogs and he'd just kick them out of the way, you know. He had a big bunch of cattle right there in his yard, you know. Them kids had to pump water for the cattle, you know. We'd have to pump too, you know. Twice a day we had to, when them cattle would come, we'd have to drink, you know, pump them with them old-time pumps. Yeah.
By golly, whenever they had a dance on Cheniere TIG, people would paddle across from Pecan Island or walk across. I know quite a few families that would walk across the marsh. They'd say someone of the family was living on Cheniere TIG, well, they'd walk across there and have a hell of a big time over the weekend and shake the fleas off and go right on back on Sunday afternoon and fight to live in the rest of the week.
We'd go horseback. We'd put a Sunday clothes and dance shoes, Sunday shoes. We'd wrap that in a slicker, you see. And we'd strip off and we'd swim across with our horses. And when we'd get across there, we'd put our work clothes back on, you see. And then we had all our Sunday clothes wrapped in that slicker. That's the way we used to go, yeah.
You'd stay there the whole weekend or just for the
No, we'd go Saturday night and we'd hit back, yeah.
Sunday morning?
Yeah, because you had to stay too long, because you'd have to pay dinner, and you had to pay supper, and you had to pay to sleep. A lot of time we had to sleep on the floor, and you had to pay 2 bits of bed. You slept on the floor. Sometime old man Sam didn't have no place. He had so many people, you know.
Old man Lise Broussard in Milton, he had a little boat, and he would carry people. They'd bring their bedding, their chickens. I mean, they'd come there for 2 weeks, well, they'd bring some chickens to eat and their bedding and everything. They'd go there and they'd rent a camp and stay there.
Oh, they had, mostly on weekends they had dances there for the, it was mostly a weekend affair, but some people would spend the whole week or even a couple of weeks. They could stay there, they'd rent them rooms in the building, or they had some camps out on the beach where they'd petition it off. Just it wasn't like today. People didn't mind petitioning off with a blanket and make a petition, just a false wall, you see, and sleep on the floor, and they'd carry their own mattress. So well, they didn't have sleeping bags in those days. And you carried a mosquito bar because the mosquitoes were kind of healthy around there.
The mosquitoes. Oh, Lord, you talk about mosquitoes.
What'd y'all do to take care of the mosquitoes, to keep them off of you?
Oh, Dad'd get up early, before day in the morning, and he'd make a big fire. It would make smoke, you know. Then the mosquito would go away a while, but not too long. They'd come back. And then our house was all screened. Yeah, the mosquitoes was bad.
You couldn't argue with those mosquitoes, by golly. If you had something that, you carried yourself a nice-looking gal or something over there, by golly, and the fellow said you had to love her up right there because you carried it off in the bushes, by golly, the bigger ones would take them off from you.
old man Walter White, he'd laugh, that'd just roll out. That is the beautiful thing you ever heard that man laugh. It would just roll out, you know. Yeah, that was the finest man. That was a fine man, too. Yeah. And poor Mr. Walter, in the evening after dinner, and everybody'd take a little rest after dinner, he'd take that old accordion, you know, and he could play, you know. He could play good. He'd make Mom and all of them dance, you know, and he'd just laugh, you know, until he'd cry. Make them dance, you know, and he'd play. Yeah.
There was a crying room, they'd call it. He'd call it a crying room today, but by golly, the babies were put to bed in the bedroom, and from the time those little girls could shake the skirt tails, by golly, they'd have to get out there and have fun too.
We ought to not tell that, though. We ought to tell that. Oh, man, we had one of my brothers, Elmer and Walter. What they'd do every morning, they'd go to old Bob Tasco's, you know. He was selling wine. Them days you could buy a gallon of wine for $1.25. And Elmer and Walter had each a glass. Every morning they had to go get a grass sack that wine, yeah. Every day, them kids would have to walk it to the other end. And they knowed better than to break one of them jugs, yeah.
No, we'd drink a lot of old homemade wine. We'd bring our own jug with us.
Yeah, you couldn't buy it at the dance.
One time I left with a jug of wine by myself, and we had to swim freshwater bay, and I swam the bay, and I decided to take a drink, and the old stopper wouldn't stay on there. It was kind of sour, you know, so I kept drinking the wine. By the time I got to Pecan Island, it was time to quit. I was getting lit up. Yeah, I'll tell you, by myself on that trip.
You all go by the beach, see the beach. It's nice. You all go in swimming. The water's salty and healthy. You all like it. We'd get a bunch of girls together and we'd go swimming. People from all over would go there. I worked at the hotel about 3 months, I guess. We had some good people and some bad people to serve.
I finished school on a Friday, and Saturday morning I took the boat. My old uncle was running a passenger boat over there. They were running a hotel there at the time, and the fellow offered me a job at that, $15 a month. By God, I grabbed it, because it was in '36, and you couldn't buy a job in those days. And by golly, when they gave you board and a little spending money, you took it. I just had a couple of changes of clothes at that time, carried them over in a grass sack. And it was a lot of fun. People from everywhere would come there and just really enjoyed themselves. Or you'd get up about 4 o'clock in the morning and go feed the animals to get on, do the work in the field. When you got back from pulling the seine out there, we had to pull a seine out in the Gulf so as to give people seafood on the table, at the guests that were at the motel at the time. And then when we'd come back, we'd take to the fields and then put in a day's work. And after that, by golly, you helped the people in the kitchen straighten up for the next day. Sometimes it was 10 o'clock before you went to bed.
We'd start off as fixing the beds in the morning, me and the Mrs. Groshy. And the other little, her son would do other work. We made the beds, we picked all the clothes, we washed them by the real board, we boiled them, hung them out. We even sewed the mosquito bars over the beds if they had holes. We mended those.
Well, I don't know. I didn't know their name much, but I'd serve them at the table, you see, and they'd boil corn. You know what I mean? And naturally, Sam would tell me to bring corns to the people to the table. And one of the boys says, "We're not a horse. We don't eat corn." So I went and I told that to Mr. Sagrera. Boy, he came there at that table. Talk about he was a man. Mad what he didn't tell him, it's what he didn't think.
Yeah, we did a little farming over here, not much, about 4 or 5 acres of cotton, I believe, and watermelons. And I mean, on our property, we worked for old man Sagrera. They farmed all kind of stuff over there. He had a lot of fruit trees. Then we got old enough, me and Boole come down here and we worked for him. Oh, we had some high times during those times.
They'd go seine down the beach to get fish to feed the people at the hotel. And I would go get the fish down there. They had an old Model T truck. Didn't have no brakes on it.
It'd lock sometime, the steering riggings were out and it'd jam. We'd make it though, we'd go there and get back. You go get oysters sometime around Southwest Pass. It locked on us back of the beach one time. They had a trail back of the beach. It was out in the prairie, and it was a good trail, and that thing made a circle with it. Come back, and old Jackson Sagrera was on there, and he got mad. He thought Tom Foster was drinking. He was the driver, So we went seining, and we went way down the beach and put in that seine. And so Jackson went back after the truck. After a while, we heard a roar. That old thing had locked, and he took the Gulf with him. But he backed it out. It was sandy bottom, and he backed it out. Oh, we had some time down there with that old thing and with everything.
Your oysters, when the tide was low, the oysters would stick out in clusters, and even so, if the water wasn't all that low, we'd walk over there and haul some up on the beach, and we'd open. And you had oysters anytime you wanted them. You'd wait out there because there was an oyster bed there. And then, like I said earlier, you use the seine as a means of seining your fish. And crabs were plentiful. You'd go out on the edge of the bank, the crab would come out on the edge of the canal. Your crab would crawl out on the edge of the bank. A lot of times we caught crab, just picked them up there.
We did a lot of smoke. We smoked our meat, a lot of it. And I was telling them the other day, I remember one time we was in the smokehouse and I asked my mother why she was smoking those coons. And she told me it was for the neighbor's dogs. But we realized now we were the little dogs that ate it. It wasn't the dogs next door. The only thing I can really say they bought would have been like the sugar, the flour, and the green coffee, which we had to roast ourselves when we were ready to use it and ground it.
And what about clothes?
Well,
seemed like my daddy went about twice a year, huh? And he bought supply clothes.
and if they wore out, you wore the hand-me-downs.
Oh, yeah.
We wore our brother's clothes.
We wore anything we could wear in those days. Of course, it didn't take a lot to live in a way. You didn't need a lot of money, but then there was no place to spend money. The Sagreras had a little grocery store. I can remember with basic needs in it, but my daddy used to go in and every 6 months is when he did it, fall and spring. We got our supplies like that. That's what I can remember. Yeah. And then we had an old schooner to go into town, this old schooner. I don't remember it with sails on it. I remember when we had a motor on it. It'd take us all day long. It would be so slow that we would count the bird nest and how many eggs was in the bird nest over the trees, you know. The trees would hang over the canal. Really, and we'd count the little bird nests, and it took us all day long to go to take. Go to intercoastal city, I guess, as far as we would get.
Oh, what happened? The water, the Gulf was so rough. When those big waves would come, that it would even come to the porch. It was so rough. We thought sure the water was going to come in the house. You might know, everybody was afraid.
So then they all decided the thing to do at a time like that was to start praying, you see. So they were reciting those rosaries real busy there. Mr. William was kind of watching out. He had a large dining room with a window on each side and a kitchen, a cistern located on the east side and one on the west side of his dining room. So he walked over to the east side and looked out, and a big wave took that cistern away. And those cisterns were set up about 4 feet off the ground. He turned and he went to the west side, and another wave picked up that west side cistern, washed it away. And he said, you know, he told it afterward, he said, that's when I went down on my old pray balls and I decided it's time to pray.
During the storm of 1918, when it was clear that the approaching storm was gathering hurricane force, those grouped at the Sagrera Hotel constructed a raft from salvaged wood and chained it to the 3 oaks near the hotel.
I looked out the front door, front window, and the waves were lashing up on the porch. They were riding right across that front ridge over the trees and coming right on our front porch, and I kind of got worried a little myself. So Uncle Walter's boys, there were 3 or 4 of them about around my size, so we were all together there. And so we went back towards the kitchen. About that time, George and Uncle Walter White came over and they said, this house is going to wash away. We better get out of here and go out on that raft. Well, we got out there and the raft wouldn't float. I recall they took that pan of food and put it down on the raft, and the first wave come along, picked the pan of food up and washed it away.
From the raft, they took refuge in the Sagrera barn.
They told us the raft wouldn't float, so we headed back towards the barn. Uncle Walter said, well, that's a good stout barn you have there. We'll go up in the loft, which we did. And so then got worried that the walls might hold back the water, so they went down there and knocked the planks off the wall. Well, things looked a little better for a while, but then after a while, Uncle Walter said, well, we're going to get trapped up here and drown like rats. Let's get out of here. So we got outside on the roof, and we went down to the edge of the roof and all jumped down and walked out to the 3 big oak trees that are in the pen there. When we arrived at the oak trees, they had built a ladder going up the tree, and Uncle Walter insisted that his wife climb the tree, and she wasn't very light. She wanted her to go first, and she had 1 or 2 children in her arms, babies, so she said, Walter, I can't go up there. How are you going to have to go, he said. And she says, Walter, that's impossible. At that time, George looks around and he sees the storm was beginning to subside. It began to show signs of the water dropping. When we went back on the beach after the storm, there wasn't a thing left of the house. Apparently there was a cyclone passed and tore up the house, and then the water just carried it off. And some of it was in the woods, and because there's a lot of trees back of Cheniere TIG, and they even found jars of preserves in the drifts out in the marsh, and it disrupted a lot of the people that lived on Cheniere TIG, because that time there was quite a few families living on Cheniere TIG. I know Uncle Walter White, he moved his family out to Little Prairie. He said he didn't want anybody to go picking up his bones in the mud.
Well, one thing about Cheniere TIG, it was a community. If one person needed help, they got it. They didn't pay for help. And once you came up to the town or wherever you're going to call it, up away from there, you couldn't get any help unless you paid for help. But down there, they helped each other. If somebody sick, I seen the time Mom would get up at 12 o'clock at night and go take care of those people, help take care of them. Or today, if you need somebody, you pay for your help. But other than that, it was easier in a way to live. But you have more convenience today.
Well, I guess it is better now, but because we've seen a lot of hard times when we were young, you know. We was a big family. Oh yeah, you had to raise all your food and everything. And there was no jobs during those times, you know. You work once in a while. I worked for 75 cents a day many times, and finally got $1 a day. I thought I was doing real good when I got big enough. Oh yeah, we had to walk a lot down here. Now you got cars, and it's way on a difference.
There was a family affair. They'd get together and everybody would work for a common cause. It was the benefit of the family. All the children would pitch in and more or less make the life easier for the whole family. And when you worked, everybody worked, and when you had fun, everybody had fun.